Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Before we start with our today's analysis, a quick gentle reminder. Byju's Exam Prep IAS has already launched its official Telegram channel. If you have not yet joined the channel, please do join so that you get all the current affairs related updates. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says the lingering crisis of labor post pandemic. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. The article here is speaking about issues faced by people after pandemic when it comes to the employment opportunities. We have the International Labour Organization which has released two reports. One happens to be the Global Wage Report of 2022-23. The other is in reference to the Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook 2022. So this article here on a broader canvas gives us the detail about these reports and what are the recommendations that have to be taken up so that we do not have any employment crisis in the near future after the pandemic. First up, we have to understand what is this Global Wage Report. When we speak about the Global Wage Report, what does it do? It gives us an idea about the trends in wages across different countries in the world. It gives us a clear picture about the global economic and labor market. It gives us what is the possible impact of the pandemic on the wages. It also gives us number of policy recommendations to mitigate the negative impact of the crisis. So for the year 2022 and 23, it has given its report, and this report goes on to say that people are witnessing grave economic and employment crisis because of the pandemic. What does the report say? The report goes on to say global wages fell in 2022 for the first time due to soaring living costs, threatening to worsen inequality and drive social unrest. What exactly is happening? We saw the 2008 crisis. Recession hit most of the countries. Because of it, what we witnessed was increasing scale of inequality in the society. After 2008, something similar has happened after the pandemic as well. So because of this large scale inequality, this could also push social unrest. People may take up arms, people are not happy in the society, and ultimately this could create a chaos in the society. Monthly wages dropped 0.9% in real terms in first half of 2022, the first negative wage growth since 2008. Lower income groups have been hit especially hard after suffering significant wage losses during COVID-19 pandemic. There is deterioration in real wages which would likely continue without targeted policy response of the governments. What does this mean? We have something called as the wage. What is this wage? Basically, the wage is nothing but the total remuneration that particular person receives either from the government or from the private agencies or for the organization for the work that he has done. So we have the employer. The employer pays a certain amount of money to the employee. So the total gross remuneration received by the employee is what is called as the wage. We have something called as the nominal wage and we have the real wage as well. What is this nominal wage? This is where the consumer price inflation is taken into picture, and when it comes to real wage, year on year change in real average monthly wages is taken into the picture. So there is deterioration in real wages which would continue, says this particular report, if the government does not come up with welfare schemes and programs. So in comparison to a fixed year, what we are actually witnessing is drop in the real wages. This ultimately means that if the government does not come up with suitable schemes and programs to uplift the poor, this means the amount of money that they'll be witnessing getting in respect to a particular time period will be far less, says this report. This would increase probability of a deeper recession, a risk that is already worsening due to the restrictive monetary policy adopted by central banks in their efforts to bring down inflation. In this time of growing social and economic uncertainties and insecurity, it is vital to rebuild, strengthen people's sense of social justice and social cohesion, is the recommendation given by the report. So, if we look into the annual average global real monthly wage growth, what we have seen is significant drop in 2022, says this report. Further, the article makes a mention of Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook of 2022, and this can also be asked in your preliminary examination as to which are the reports that are published and released by the International Labour Organization. So according to this report, the Asia Pacific region has lost as many as 22 million jobs in 2022. So this will further increase inequality, this will further increase poverty as well, and ultimately there will be chaos in the society, says Asia Pacific Employment and Social Outlook of 2022. So remember, when we look into the data, what does the data go on to say? In India, the nominal wages rose to 17,017 per month in 2021 from 4,398 in 2006. The data was taken from Government of India's Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, but inflation is factored. The real wage growth in India plunged to minus 0.02% in 2021 from 9.3% in 2006. In China, the growth decreased from 5.6% in 2019 to 2% in 2022. In Pakistan, the growth is minus 3.8%, and figures of Sri Lanka were not available. The negative growth in India started after the pandemic. So if we look into the real wage index for G20 countries as well as emerging G20 countries, this is what it goes on to depict. So the inference is that this has hit a larger section of the people. There has been a greater impact on low income earners, and households have very less money at their disposal, says this article. Does this mean there is inequality which is rising? At the Asia Pacific level, only the jobs in high skill occupations saw a recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, which is true across all sub-regions. The ILO said it is raising concerns about increased inequality. There is employment gain of 1.6% among high skilled workers between 2019 and 21. There is no such substantial gain among low to medium workers. This means that the high skilled workers are able to generate employment opportunities, but the low skilled workers are not able to generate the employment opportunities. Among the G20 countries, the report noted a significant gap in the average level of real wages between advanced G20 countries and emerging G20 countries such as India. It is on the level of about $4,000 per month in advanced economies and about 1,800 per month in emerging economies. So what are the remedies and the recommendations given by the International Labour Organization? The report said there is need to strengthen labour market institutions and wage policies. The ILO states the creation of decent formal wage employment is a prerequisite for more equitable distribution of wages and income and is key contributor to equitable and sustainable wage growth. It wants governments to focus on gender pay gap where there is inequality or pay parity which is not equal for both men and the women. This will also have to be addressed by the relevant legislations come up by the government of respective countries. Most importantly, the report says that a multilateral approach is key to solving the crisis around, which means to say that it requires all stakeholders come together. The government, the private, the civil society will have to come together, and all countries will also have to come together as this is a global crisis. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says faith and freedom. We also have a relevant article for the same where the Supreme Court offers to find solution to deceitful conversions. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. When we look into the background, we have Odisha, which came up with what is called as the Orissa Freedom of Religion Act of 1967. So Odisha was the first state in India to enact a piece of legislation restricting religious conversions. So what did Odisha do? It came up with a law which disallowed religious conversions. After Odisha came up with it, multiple other came up with it as well. We have Madhya Pradesh, which came up with a law similar to what was released in Odisha in 1968. Chhattisgarh came up in 2003. Gujarat came up with a similar law in 2003. Rajasthan in 2005. Himachal Pradesh in 2006. So on and so forth. So we have Odisha, which came up with this particular law back in the 1967. This happens to be the first law that restricted forceful religious conversion. After this, it was the Madhya Pradesh government which came up with the Madhya Pradesh Freedom of Religion Act of 1968. This basically basically means that when you consider both these laws, in case there is anyone who's using force, let's say there is threatening one person that I'll kill you, I'll chop you off, this is nothing but force. So it's pushing that particular person, threatening that particular person with an act of murder, with an act of threat, with an act of hurt, with an act of grievous hurt. If such act is pushed on another person where he is asked to convert from one religion to another, such is restricted under these laws. So there is force, then what we have is inducement as well. What is this inducement? Basically, if one of the persons from one community is asking a person from another community to convert to his community, basically by giving him gift or gratification, either it is in the form of money, which is in the form of cash, or in the form of gain, or they are providing some pecuniary advantages as well, or this is through fraud as well, that is through mispresentation or through fraudulent practices. All this will fall under the religious practices. So basically, when we are speaking about religious practices, Odisha came up with this particular law first, followed by Madhya Pradesh government. When this particular law came into picture, it was questioned. The premise of this particular law was questioned in the high courts of the respective states. So what did the Odisha High Court say? The Odisha High Court declared that Odisha Act was ultra vires the constitution. Why? Because it infringed upon the right guaranteed under Article 25. So it said whatever law that was passed by Odisha is not constitutional. Why is it not constitutional? Because it is violating Article 25 of the Indian Constitution. Then a similar law was asked in a high court in Madhya Pradesh, but Madhya Pradesh High Court upheld the Madhya Pradesh Act. So on one side, the High Court of Odisha said, no, this law cannot be implemented because it is violating Article 25, but Madhya Pradesh law was upheld by the High Court. So what we have is conflicting decisions. One High Court says that this law is wrong. It is a similar law which was also advanced in Madhya Pradesh, but that High Court says that it has upheld this particular law. So there were conflicting viewpoints, and ultimately it goes to the Supreme Court of India. So the Supreme Court of India in Ray Stanley's was a state of Madhya Pradesh and others went on to say that if a person is forced to convert from one religion to another, that is not fine, and conversion of a person from one religion to another does not fall under the purview of Article 25, said the Supreme Court of India. So the Supreme Court in this landmark judgment went on to say the right to propagate one's religion does not have a right to convert any person to one's own religion. So there is no fundamental right to convert any person from one religion to another. Why are we discussing about all this? That is because we have one of the laws in Gujarat which is also stopping forceful conversion from one community to another, and that is in the form of Gujarat Freedom of Religion Act. There is one of the sections called as Section 5. What does it say? Prior permission to be taken from district magistrate with respect to the conversion. Whoever converts any person from one religion to another, either by performing any ceremony by himself for such conversion as a religious priest, or takes part directly or indirectly in such ceremony, shall take prior permission for such proposed conversion from the district magistrate concerned by applying in such form as may be prescribed by the rules. It is this part that the Gujarat High Court had stayed the implementation. The High Court said that prior permission required would force someone else to disclose one's religious belief or any change of faith, and this is contrary to the Supreme Court rulings, said the High Court of Gujarat. So the High Court of Gujarat went on to say that such implementation is wrong and is against the privacy of a person. But now the government of Gujarat has gone ahead, and there have been other petitions in the Supreme Court as well, and they are asking for revocation of this stay that is made by the High Court of Gujarat. What are the concerns associated with it? The government of Gujarat has gone to Supreme Court. It is asking for revoking this particular stay that was given by the High Court of Gujarat. So this article currently goes on to say that if a person is asked to reveal why he is converting from one religion religion to another, it is violating freedom of conscience and the right to privacy as well. A person can convert to another religion irrespective of whatever reasons that that person might have. But if you're asking that particular person, why are you converting? In such a case, it is violating freedom of conscience. What is freedom of conscience? This is envisaged under Article 25 of the Indian Constitution. I can think God in any form as well. So freedom of conscience basically means you can think of God as a form, you can think of God as formless as well. So if you are asked to convey the reason, it is violating that thought process of a person, and at the same time it is also violating the right to privacy, says this article. Further, another link article goes on to say the Supreme Court said that acts of charity or good work to help a community or the poor should not clock an intention to convert them religiously as payback. So it has gone ahead and said that if you are providing some good work, that does not mean that you convert that person from one religious community to another. We will take up this article elaborately. Why? Because the Supreme Court will hear this particular case again on 12th. We will have a detailed discussion on this topic. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, why are fisherfolk protesting the Vizhinjam port project? We have one of the projects that is initiated in the state of Kerala in the Trivandrum. So this article goes on to say that this project is being opposed by number of fisherfolk as well as people in and around this particular project. Why? Because they feel that this may increase the coastal erosion, they may lose out on their land, and ultimately it could be detrimental to such people. So they are protesting against this particular project. According to the protesters, the port work has aggravated the coastal erosion along the coast of Thiruvananthapuram, and as a result, what they are asking is a 7-point demand. What are these 7 points of demand? One, you have to conduct a study. What is this study about? You are constructing this particular project. This project may have its own share of advantages and benefits, but do we have a study of its own? So even before you execute this particular project, conduct a study. What are the likely consequences? What are the environmental consequences? All of it will have to be taken up. So conduct an impact study and shelve the project till the report is out. So once the report is ready from one of the expert panel, only then execute it. Until then, please stop this particular project is the first one. Second, it goes on to say that rehabilitation of the families will have to be taken up for all those people who have lost their homes because of the sea erosion. So what is that you have to do? You have to provide rehabilitation to such people. If coastal erosion has taken away the lives of the people, the houses of the people, then rehabilitation will have to be provided is the second recommendation. Third, compensation for the loved ones in the fishing accidents. In case there are fishing accidents, what you have to do is provide compensation is the third recommendation given by the community. Fourth, the fisher folk will have to be provided the financial aid when, especially when they are provided with the weather warnings when they are not able to enter the seas. Then they have to be subsidized with kerosene. As of now, they are provided kerosene. This should be further subsidized is another recommendation. A mechanism will also have to be taken up to dredge the fishing harbor, and finally effective steps will also have to be taken to mitigate the coastal erosion, says this particular recommendation. So as of now, they feel that there is coastal erosion. In order to make sure that all these issues are addressed, they have come up with the 7-step recommendation. Has it actually aggravated the coastal erosion? Let's look into the data. A study conducted by National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, Society of Integrated Coastal Management, and the Ministry of Environment and Forest had noted that erosion is minimum at Thrissur and maximum at Thiruvananthapuram even before the port construction. All types of construction will basically have erosion on one side and accretion on the other side. So there will be erosion that will be taking place on one side and there will be accretion on the other side. In Kerala's case, the seasonal shoreline changes would be more severe during the monsoon months due to high energy, short storm waves that lash the coast almost in a perpendicular direction, moving the sand offshore. The report of the expert committee appointed by the National Green Tribunal and Shoreline Monitoring Cell observed that erosion in spots such as Valiyaputra, Shanmugam, Puntura remained the same as before and after the commencement of the port construction. However, during 2020 September 2021 period, spots like Kochuvelli and Cheryathura to the north of the Villaputra suffered erosion. The report noted that relatively high number of cyclones formed over the Arabian Sea after Cyclone Ochiki in 2017 was the main reason for the recent erosion and accretion, and the impact of the port activity on the other side was less significant. So some of the report says that yes, it may have impacted, but other reports say that it is not due to the construction of the report, but it is because of the monsoon, it is because of the cyclone effects, because of other factors not associated with the construction of the port activities in this particular region. What is the government stance? The government has clearly said that this erosion is because of the climate change and not because of the construction of this activity. What is the advantage of this particular project? Where is it located? It is located on the southern point. It is located at the southern tip as well. It is just about 10 nautical miles from the international sea route, and at the same time this particular report can play a major role in the maritime development of the state of Kerala. So how does it help? It will help in development of Kerala, and at the same time the port is expected to leverage growth of minor ports in Kerala and other regional ports, creating thousands of jobs and creating employment opportunities. This is the second advantage because of this project, and the third advantage is this particular port is in close proximity to some of the major international shipping routes and will also boost India's economy as well. It is also strategically important because it can challenge Colombo, Singapore and Dubai for a portion of shipment traffic. These are some of the advantages because of this particular port development. Now let's look into the next article. This article says no uniformity in parole and furlough rules. Let us try and understand what is this article all about. First, we have to know the difference between parole and furlough. What is parole? It is not a right of the prisoner, but furlough is the right of the prisoner. What is parole? It is releasing a prisoner with a suspension of the sentence. It is releasing a prisoner with remission of his sentence. In case of short-term confinement, parole may be granted. In case of long-term confinement, furlough may be granted. It can be granted a number of times. When it comes to parole, there is a limitation to the grant of furlough. Parole lasts for 1 month. Furlough lasts for 14 days maximum. So what we will discuss under this article is how there is change when it comes to parole as well as furlough rules in different states. Why is it different? That is because when it comes to the prison is in state subject. We have the 7th schedule. In 7th schedule, we have the central list, which is the union list, state list as well as the concurrent list. Prison happens to be under the state rules. So when it comes to the state subject, it is the state which should be able to make laws, and each of it is different for different kinds of state. When it comes to parole, a specific justification is necessary, and when it comes to furlough, it is break the monotony of punishment, so no justification is needed. The days of leaves aren't included within the sentence period. The sentence of convict goes along with the furlough period. These are some of the differences between furlough as well as furlough. Now, what are the laws in the country? We have two major laws. One is the Prisons Act of 1894. The other is the Prisoners Act of 1900. But this does not contain any specific provision pertaining to parole and furlough. What are the key differences? When it comes to parole, leaves and furlough, the Uttar Pradesh rules provide for the suspension of the sentence without mentioning the term parole or furlough or leave by the government, generally up to 1 month. Maharashtra, it is about 21 to 48 days, or emergency parole for 14 days, or regular parole for 45 to 60 days. The recently revised rules of Haryana, it goes on to give about 10 weeks in two parts, furlough for 3 to 4 weeks in a calendar year. In Tamil Nadu, ordinary leave is for 21 to 40 days, emergency is for about 15 days, and Andhra Pradesh, on account of continued illness of a prisoner, they permit furlough and parole emergency leave up to 2 weeks. So with this, what we understand is that the number of days that a person can be given parole or furlough is depending on the state's discretion. The state can come up with its own laws as well, and this ultimately varies from one state to another. The next question is, why is parole or furlough given? Emergency parole or leave is granted for specified emergencies such as death, serious illness, or marriage in the family. While most states consider only close relatives such as spouse, parent, son, daughter, brother, and sister as close family, Kerala has a long list of more than 24 relatives in case of death and 10 in case of marriage. So again, this varies from state to state. In Kerala, a convict becomes eligible for ordinary leave after serving one third of a year in prison if he is sentenced for 1 year. Haryana has a long list of hardcore prisoners who are not entitled to be released except on custody parole. Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Kerala, and West Bengal do not permit release of habitual criminals and convicts. Some states do not impose any such conditions. What if the convict is released on a parole or a furlough? And if this person does not come back to the jail after that particular period of time, each state has its own rules once again. Haryana punishes such person for 2 to 3 years of imprisonment. Tamil Nadu punishes the convict under prison rules. Uttar Pradesh records indiscipline and puts restrictions on further suspension of sentence depending on the overstay. So each state has its own share of rules and regulations. This is where the author goes on to say what we need is regulation. Since this falls under the state domain, central government would not be able to make the laws. But more than 50% of the states decide, then they can request the central government to make laws. If this is not done so, it can be misused by the state. There can be arbitrariness that can immediately creep in, and this endangers the entire criminal justice system as states can flout its own laws, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Write a note on global employment scenario post pandemic and suggest set of policy options and responses to the cost of living crisis. Examine the status of anti-conversion laws in India. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.